Hi, I'm Carl Brink. This is my new YouTube channel. I'm going to be going over my maker projects. I'm a fairly new welder, taking some classes and things like that, but not anything particularly great. A couple notes about this project. I'm making this for a friend. It's a D20. I'm going to weld up out of plate steel, and he's going to be using it for his business, where he sells D20s at conferences and online and things like that. So we'll make that for him. Got most of the design worked up, and I'll kind of go over some of that. A couple things to note: I do have a Harbor Freight welder. I bought it with the intention of converting it over to DC. I will be doing that later on, but it works well enough. It has a lot of splatter. Things don't look great. Requires a lot of cleanup, but hey, work with what I have.
So I did my initial layout in SketchUp and created a D20 there. It's made of 20 equilateral triangles, and we'll see that it is made of, and we'll see the dihedral angle is 138.2 degrees, and that's going to be the angle from flat side to flat side.
Hey everybody, so this is stock we'll be using. This is 5 inch by, this one's 4 foot and I got under 6 foot, 1/8 inch mild steel. This is about the limit of my welder can do. Because of the way we'll be doing the angles, it should be just fine. Shouldn't get any blowout. Should be thick enough that, then I don't have to worry about blowout. But it is, I'll have to pay attention to some penetration. I've got, I'm learning machining too and upgrading some of my measurement tools. But I'm not quite there yet, so I'll be using a lot of my woodworking tools, but I don't really need the precision that I normally have to have. So I'm just taking my gauge and I need to make equilateral triangles, so I need to have a good 60-degree angle for markup and layout. I'll be laying out these into exactly 5 inch on the side equilateral triangles, which would be like a little over 4.5 inches tall. So first thing we'll do is cut out 20 of these. Okay, so I've got my stock here. I've got my 60-degree angle. By the way, a good thanks to the guys at Alro. Very helpful about helping me pick out the right steel. Kind of knew what I needed to do, but it's good to check with the guys that are there, especially when you're new. What I'm going to do is start with the first 60. Okay, against this end we'll flip over. I'm going to do the other 60. Then what I'll do is I'll actually measure out everything and make sure that I have it. So I have 2 ways to verify that I did it okay. Alright. Okay, a couple of notes. So I'm using a metal cutoff saw, which is not the most precise instrument, especially mine. There's a lot of vibration in it, but I'm trying to get it as accurate as I can. I don't need it to be perfect. It can actually be a little undersized, but I want to, the important thing is to kind of have all the sides the same for all these triangles. So what I've done is set up the metal chop saw. It kind of ignored the angle settings on that because they're not very accurate. I'm using my line more than I am the saw, and then I just kind of lined it up with an Allen wrench so I could see where the blade was going and where actually. You can probably guess the angle measurement was quite a bit off. So let's go take a look. Okay, so what I did here is I took my Allen wrench, brought the saw blade down, lined it up. I actually pushed it up against there and got so I could see that line up there like that. I think you can get a good view of that right there. So that's the plan. I'm gonna cut the angles in there. All the sides should be the same. I'll go in and clean them up. Start putting it together with tack welds. I'll show you the jig here in a little bit about how I do the angle in between the two sides. Okay, so that's about a minute of using the cutoff saw. Most likely what I'm doing is heating it up and work hardening it and not actually getting through. So I think the lesson I'm going to learn here is I'm going to go to my local hackerspace and use their
metal bandsaw and not the metal cutoff saw for big stuff like this. It'll actually get me a little more precision too, so I think that's where I'm going to head to next. Here I am at the hackerspace where they have a really nice bandsaw. This turned out to be a really good decision. I had a repeatable setup, so I didn't need to draw up the layout lines. I just do the cut at 60 degrees, release the clamp, flip, and line up where the angle starts. I clamp it and then set the cut to start. I was able to get through all the cuts really quickly. Here I'm cleaning up the edges. This is not the safest setup, but nothing flew out. I had 20 pieces with 3 edges, so I opted for a quick change and a faster turnaround, and it worked out really well. So I just cleaned the edges on 20 triangles, 3 edges. My arm's a little tired holding that angle grinder. So now I'm going to create my jig. My jig's going to be fairly simple. I need to achieve an angle of 138 degrees between the flat sides. So what I'm going to do is take a square tubing, cut it so there's only one lip left, bend it to the 138, and then I'll tack a little bar on the side so it holds that angle, and then I'll start welding it up. Alright, so here's what we got. Cut it down the center and bent it to 182. Looks good. At least good enough for what we're going to be doing. 183. So good. Alright, I just did the tack welds for the jig, so everything should be in place, and I'll start this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a spacer in between the two halves and just put a tack weld in there, because what I want to be able to do is, I may not have everything perfect, so I want to have the ability to adjust it. If I put just one tack weld, I have a little bit of angle this way as they go through, and I have a little bit of angle this way that I can fudge just a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. I'll show you what I'm doing. Okay, so here's the jig set up, and I've got to be real careful about this. Everything needs to kind of line up, and the inner edges should touch. So I have that gap in the top. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll put a little cardboard spacer in between there, and then I will tack it up. Okay, so this is the first tack weld, and it looks a little bigger than probably what it should be. This is the third attempt. I learned a couple lessons. One, always check your speed and power for the weld you're doing. And also the splatter, that's the Chicago Electric. I'll grind that out. It's still on AC, so it tends to splatter a lot. But that grinds off fairly easily. So I learned a couple lessons. One is always check the feeds. The other is, I only really start having a good weld right about there. It's fine for now. I also learned that I need to move along with the edge. I can't just kind of go in and just do a straight little tack like that. I've got to kind of go and drag just a little bit, and it's got to be in between and drag along the line. So good lessons learned. I'll move on from that. So I knew that clamping was going to get a little more tricky as I went along, as the piece was starting to close up. So unfortunately, I needed wider grip on the clamp, so I have to use a plastic clamp. I hope that's going to be okay. We're going to take a look here, but this is going to become more and more tricky as I go along. So probably going to have to run tape, anything that'll basically kind of hold it. As the structure forms, I'll get each one of these in. I'll kind of go over what's happening here. I'll show you a little bit about it. So as we see, it is, you take one equilateral triangle and then weld two on the side, and then as that comes together you'll get a shape like this, which is a pentagon. You get a pyramidal pentagon like that. So we're coming up here. I'm about to make this weld. Okay, and as you see, we had to get underneath there with this clamp. It's a pretty long way to clamp. So I'm going to hold it with a plastic clamp. I hope it'll be okay with heat. We'll see as it goes through. But that's what we're left with. The first few were easy to clamp with the jig. You'll see the jig still underneath there. Clamped right in there, holding that angle. Everything seems to be going along pretty well. Some of the fits are a little tight. I have a feeling I'm going to be grinding a little bit later to get everything in. But so far, so good. So I ended up having to do some of the welds by tacking on the inside. Particularly as I started getting some of the form, but not all the way. And then I went back to the outside as I only had access to the outside. I ended up using some tape to hold some things on as I went through. I ended up only doing the bare minimum number of tacks so I could kind of bend things. So as long as it was holding form, that's when I did a tack. And I did end up having to bend things back into place, either because the pieces were a little off or it got a little warped from the weld. Yeah, my welds are not pretty. I did have some gaps, but for this project and the rusty patina that I'm going to put on it, it's going to work. I was going for kind of an old beat up look, so that actually kind of works for me, is the unfinished weld look. Back to Hackerspace to use the vinyl cutter so I could create stencils and put them on so I could do the patina and you'd still see the numbers. There were some missteps, but I got it figured out in the end. Took a couple of tries, but you'll see over here the clear vinyl stencils went on it pretty well. We'll start the patina.
Okay, so it's running late at night. I've got everything all taped up, stenciled up, looking good. Silhouette worked fairly well. I had to learn a couple things about it, but as you'll see, it's all, you can come in and see there and see the clear stencils on there. I've got some vinegar and baking soda. I'm going to put the vinegar in a spray bottle, go over this, and I'll probably let it sit for about an hour and a half. Then I'll hit it with the baking soda. Stop the reaction. I'll take it all off, and then I'll do another coat as well of the opening on the bottom now. But what I'll do is I'll spray this all on top to get this all nice and covered, and then then I'll flip it over and do the top so I get good coverage on both sides, and we'll see how that turns out. Alright, so here's the final product. I sprayed it with vinegar about 15 minutes for about an hour and a half for the letters, and then pulled it off and then did a light coat. So you'll see some of the rust kind of wiped off, and some of it stuck better in some places than others, but you can really see the effect. I'm pretty happy with it. You can definitely see the numbers. I was hoping for a little darker on the numbers, but that's turned out good. I really like it. Alright.
So I ended up putting 4 coats of lacquer on it. This is what it looked like at the con. I got some great comments on it, but I think I'm going to scrape all that off and sand it off, and I'm going to etch the numbers next time. And I'll get that done before his next con. So I'm going to wrap up with some lessons learned. I learned a lot of really good lessons from this. It was an interesting project. The first kind of mechanical things: check power and speed when you're welding every time. You'll leave it at the last setting. Cheap tools will work if you know their weaknesses, but it's also good to know when the cheap tools are not going to work and you need to do something better. You need to move up. Hackerspace was invaluable for that. The bandsaw was a really good decision. It really helped speed up things. I didn't have to do all the fussy layout. I could go and flip things through and put the clamp. I wouldn't have been able to get it done as quickly if I didn't have the bandsaw. I also had the other tools from the Hackerspace, the vinyl cutter, things like that. It really helped me get through this project. Also, I think I will go and strip all this down and do a paint and etch instead. I like the patina well enough, but I don't think I got the effect as well as I'd like it, so I'll go to a paint and etch the next time. On to non-mechanical things of lessons learned is talking to professional and peers was invaluable. I talked to the guys at Alro. They were perfect. They really helped me with my selection, at least make sure that I was confident that I was getting the right thing. I also talked to the people at Hackerspace. Talking through my project, I was able to avoid a big mistake that would have cost me a lot of time. So overall, it was a really good project, and the collaboration was great. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be doing more videos. My next video will be doing a metal and reclaimed pallet wood patio furniture. I hope you subscribe. Please like. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you.